I want to use the available time for about 20 minutes now to respond to some of the things. I hope there is a mic that can go around so that people can speak through it. And for the time being, if you would come up here, if anybody has a question to raise, don't bring me anything else but what we have done this morning. Please, speak up loud if you can.
I was referring to Reb Zalman's comment in the beginning about recovering some of the containers. Could you just repeat that? I want to really get it, and I didn't.
I don't know if that's going to be it, because I've traveled away from there. But what I really had in mind is that the container for consciousness is that one that comes from the matrix that is between the body and consciousness. And that is the container that makes the difference, for instance, for blood vessels, for digestion, for all the autonomic nervous system stuff that's going on in there. An example, how imagery operates, you know. If I want to raise my blood pressure in the finger, I would have a lot of trouble unless I learned how to do that first. But if I want to arouse myself sexually, for instance, all I need to do is go into the imaginal world, you know, and that'll translate itself in the body, and for males in one way, for females in another way, and right away there will be a somatic response to that imagery. So you see what I'm trying to say? The container for consciousness is in imagery, okay? All right, anyone else? First you, then you. Go ahead, out loud.
You talked a lot this morning about the idea that God is not an object, not out there. We even say we're in the presence of God. It means He's there and I'm here. Or you, thou, and I. It's the language is like when I'm praying. Who am I praying to? Where is this God? And I have to keep reminding myself that that's me. But the language is very difficult.
Well, let me go back for a moment to what I said about the ego, okay? There's transparent and there's translucent. The ego likes to be more translucent than transparent. Sometimes it becomes totally opaque, but sometimes it's translucent. And when it's translucent, some light gets through. But sometimes the translucent thing acts as if it were the source of light. Get the idea? When you're saying, right, on the one hand, your brain wouldn't operate, your mind wouldn't operate, you wouldn't be conscious if God didn't keep all this machinery going for you, okay? So you say it's me, then the ego takes over and says, it's all what I spin in my head, okay? What would be if you were to own the fact that everything, all the processes that are happening in you are God playing Iris? When I get up in the morning, sometimes I say, Boine Shalom, you decided to be Zalman again for a day? Okay, yeah. I'll give you a nice ride. I'll give you a noble ride today, okay? But when you are in that place, then you don't have the root metaphor operative for you. And the root metaphor, which is friend, let's say, partner. And when you have that root metaphor in operation, then what happens is you are making space, as it were, in front of you. That one needs garments, as it were. Let me spell this one out a little more. William James, great psychologist, philosopher, came to a town in New England and talked to the deacons there in the church and asked them, what do you do? How do you place yourself in the presence of God? How do you do that? And this guy says to him, I envision myself in the presence of an oblong blur. No, the heart has no connection to an oblong blur. Okay? He was trying to be reasonable, and he was trying to be aniconic. I don't want to give God any shape, okay? I'm not talking about giving God a physical shape. And so when Professor Heschel was talking about that very same thing, he says, it is not that we ascribe to God pomorphism, but anthropopathy. That's to say that the feelings that we feel, God has them too. That creation is something that God loves us into life. Okay? That aspect of the friend, the lover, is something we put out. But it's like an altar. It becomes a God trap, as it were. It attracts divinity. And the more you see devout people in their devotional thing, you have a sense how divinity is attracted to them. And they're projecting. You begin with a projection. And when you say, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, I've set the Lord before me always, that's a projection. That projection gets filled somehow. And you get a sense, sometimes Ramakrishna talked about this, that there was a statue of Kali, but Kali wasn't there. And then he began to pray until Kali came and inhabited the statue. I can understand that, you see. And for us, it comes in the form of those names that we have for God. So when we call Hagachaman, like when the compassionate, the merciful one, we are putting out, this is the attribute under which I want to meet you, God. And what happens is, because that is not outside of God, it attracts God energies that fit that attribute. And my transactions are with that one. But if I think about this, mentally, I have transaction with the God attribute, you know, it doesn't work. But when I say, you, loving, compassionate one, I want to tell you what's bugging me, okay? You see, there's a big problem. Today, we are conscious of our consciousness. So you also have to be able to understand what you're doing in order to experience. That's what I'm talking about. You know, sometimes if somebody else delivers the experience, so you get a hot gospel preacher, you know, he delivers the experience and you're there, but somehow you're taken into that. If I would want to say you're seduced into that experience. But the whole point that we are dealing with is we have to be managing our own awareness. Look, if I were to speak about the crisis, all right, short rap from something else to come back to Iris's, I haven't forgotten. I'm not yet ready for you. I haven't forgotten. I just want to say something else.
Bring the questions to the microphone.
Huh?
The microphone back here.
Very good. Next time I'll send them here. Now we will continue.